That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Marianne, the directorial debut of Michael Rozek, which premiered at the 2023 Torino Film Festival. It's currently without US distribution, but as part of an Eventive virtual cinema release, audiences are able to see it in the US from July 16th to July 23rd, 2024.
Right now.
Right now. Mm-hmm.
Directorial debut. Mm-hmm. This is what the IMDb premise says. Isabelle Huppert's tour de force, her first one-character film, and a spectacular showcase for one of the greatest actresses in film history.
Who doesn't love the sound of that? I guess the first time in film that something like this is done with her, but she's done a lot of stage work where she is a one-woman show, one of which I saw earlier this year in London.
What's your pull quote?
I'm making an homage to Gertrude Stein, which I know sounds pretentious perhaps. Isabelle is Marianne. In the minimalist vein of Beckett, Huppert hypnotizes, castigates, and consoles her audience in this self-reflexive exercise examining the sacred relationship between cinema and spectator.
Mine. Marianne is playing with us, testing our devotion to cinema. I failed. This was not for me at all. But I think this film needs to be watched by the right person at the right time at the right place. I think to stream it in your apartment on your ragged couch with the air conditioner not working, you know what I mean? Like it would.
That didn't apply to our experience.
That's not us, but it's like this is not the kind of film that you just like casually watch because you may be a fan of that, like the actor. I could see this being more effective during like the film festival circuit or like an installation at a museum perhaps. But for me, sitting at home watching it for 90 minutes, I found it very tedious.
It is tedious. I think that if you are a true fan of Isabelle Huppert, this is probably must-see and might feel very alienating towards others. But that's why I think it's also kind of an interesting self-reflexive exercise based on the casting, which as we'll probably get into, it's playing with. But it's like a cinematic manifesto of sorts. And I bring up Beckett because it feels very much like that kind of experimental theatrical tendency. And you've seen some Beckett. We saw Diane Wiest in Happy Days on stage.
Okay.
Which, if you recall that, where she's buried in sand with her husband's leg sticking in the back and it's just a long monologue. And I know I've also showed you Beckett's Not I. If you haven't seen Not I, there's a recording of it with Billy Whitelaw. It's just her lips speaking on stage for a monologue that's about this woman that's experiencing trauma. To me, it was tapping into that for me, and I do feel like Huppert is at times quite hypnotic.
So what is it about? Isabelle plays a woman who at one point calls herself Marianne, and
then tells her that she made that name up.
And she's just sitting on a couch being recorded, and she's just running her mouth. And basically what I took from it is, because she brings up a lot of things which we can get into, but it's like she's talking to the audience, breaking the fourth wall. Kind of a major motif is that she's talking about like being a mirror, and she's a reflection of them, but they're also a reflection of her. But I think she represents film, and I think what it all boils down to is what I think this film is supposed to be targeting, like people who call themselves cinephiles, and how it kind of made me think of my pull quote for Kinds of Kindness, and how I said that Lanthimos is playing with us. Like there are people out there who will do everything they can to try to make this film seem like a masterpiece, and I think this film is actually doing that, like forcing these so-called cinephiles, all these assholes at these film festivals who will argue until they turn blue in the face that a film is spectacular because of who made it, who's in it.
Yeah. Even
in the face of a film like this that's deliberately defying good filmmaking, in the sense that so she's being it's deliberately like the camera's not steady, the shots are awkward. At one point we see a boom mic. For half the film, inconsistently, there are closed captions. Her character, which I was hoping after the first 5 minutes this would not be the case, but for the entire 90 minutes, Isabelle is referencing a script. So it's very
it seems like she's reading off of, like the actor in Tootsie.
So the delivery's not smooth. so at first I thought, oh, is she playing an actor who's working through some dialogue, but then eventually it's going to be more natural, and no, it's not. But then at a point in the film, she says, oh, I'm not reading off this script.
And she shows it to us, but we can kind of see before that it's not. It looks like just lists of words.
So the actor, I would assume, like Isabelle was actually like, she had remembered this dialogue and was reciting it, and part of that was to pretend like she was looking at notes, which is impressive if that's the case. But the end result, because at a point, so maybe like at the hour mark, she sort of finishes her diatribe
And she tells us we're at about the hour mark. I think it's a challenge in every way.
yes. So then she gets up and she's done, and I'm assuming like her assistant, she tells them, call me a car, I'm ready to leave. So the car shows up, she leaves and goes to another location, which maybe is like her home.
No, I think we see those same penguin statues. I feel like she comes back to the same place that she was.
But just a different room.
Yeah.
Okay, so then she leaves the house, and then we get like there's a new chapter of the film that started called From That Comes This. And then now she's no longer sitting on a couch, she's talking to herself in a mirror. And she's rambling on about something, and then we get a new chapter.
She's actually reading, it's from the Bible, it's from Corinthians.
I said what I said. Then there's a new chapter where she says, this is not a dream. And now she's back on the couch that she originally started on.
And then in the first longish segment, the first hour plus segment, she's talking about the notion of narrative or story. And she's relaying the story of the character of Marianne meeting her niece in the supermarket and how that is causing this dramatic tension because there's this estrangement between them. And then that third part, after This Is Not a Dream, it's like she's that character talking to the niece.
What did I like about this film? Isabelle Huppert, obviously.
I thought she looked pretty good.
She does look great. Mm-hmm. I like being challenged to a degree sometimes. And I think this film is challenging. I feel like I was getting the gist of what it was trying to do, and so it's effective in that way. I just think it's missing a couple of things. So then, I think it is effective in challenging audiences and questioning people's sort of love for cinema and what that means and the sort of concessions people make. So it feels smart. Mm-hmm. Okay. What I think's missing is the humor. I think there are moments that are funny because there are some ironic moments, specifically if you're more familiar with Isabelle Huppert and her work. Mm-hmm. And then there are some moments that are just clearly like meant to be humorous. But
like when she screams at us to wake up?
Sure. But I think the comedic component, I think the audience deserves some relief, and that could have come in the form of more comedic moments. I also wish that...
You didn't like when she suddenly said, I'm not feeling well, and then gets up abruptly just to sit back down.
I feel like they should have played with us more, and one way in particular would have been to frustrate the audience, because her performance is frustrating because it's not smooth. She keeps referencing her notes, so it's like...
She's speaking in English, by the way, through the whole thing, and in a very halting way.
That, I think, just for me, it's the kind of thing that made my skin kind of crawl, like someone was scratching a chalkboard, so that was hard to sit through. Because when she speaks in English, it sounds like she's chewing on her tongue sometimes. But in this iteration where she isn't smooth, like she keeps, because she's very repetitive, she keeps saying the same things over and over again, I found it grating. But I wish that we would have balanced some of that out with her demonstrating like she is a phenomenal actor and can deliver dialogue in a very smooth, realistic way. Mm-hmm. Because it was also, and again, I think all of the choices were deliberate. Like her playing with words, even though like it didn't quite work because English is not her first language. So sometimes her questioning the way words sounded didn't quite make sense because I don't think that this character knew what the word was. I think it was deliberate, but I wish it would have been balanced out with her sort of acting real, like she's really talking normally. Because then I feel like that's challenging. Like, oh, so we love this actor, Isabelle Huppert, when she's giving us the kind of performances we're used to. So what does that mean when she gives us bad, quote unquote, bad performances, which in this film was deliberate? are we still going to love her in the same way?
Well, and are we still going to stick around to pay attention?
Yes.
Because we're constantly being challenged in this break of the fourth wall. It starts out with the break where she says, she references Thelonious Monk. She's like, why do I reference that? Because automatically this kind of pretentious reference is separating me from you, and I want to reach you through the screen. I want to, and she says, I'm being real, I'm being in the moment, and because I'm being alive. But all of that is in itself inauthentic.
Right. Well, you already referenced it, but at like maybe the halfway point, she screams like, "Are you awake?" And then kind of like, again, playing with the audience. Then she has this sort of a moment where she's talking about free will and how like we're choosing to watch this, and like so we're choosing to watch.
Yeah, we're being challenged. It's almost like if I can't turn you away, I'll let you in on some secrets. One of them is like if you've stayed around long enough this time, you'll I'm paraphrasing, but you're me and I'm you, kind of. But I really liked this notion of what cinema is supposed to represent, because there's she goes off into a diatribe as well about how people want to escape or forget, when really cinema should effectively be therapizing us so we can deal with our issues. And I also really like that she's kind of asking, like, you're watching me, but who are you? Who are you watching me? And what kind of a relationship do we have?
Yeah. I like that it poses questions and forces us to think. And she says a few times, she references the idea of like, we live in a time where like people can look things up. So she says a couple times, like, look it up. Like, if you don't know who this person is, look it up. I did laugh once, which was when she goes like, "Oh, what is this film about? 90 minutes long." But at that point I was exhausted. So
she does give us some things that we could expect. Like, she does like verbally berate us. But I kept thinking, staring into her gaze as she's trying to, reach something in me, as she says, it reminded me of the famous quote by Nietzsche of, when you stare into the abyss stares back into you. And some other references that she's like, but those separate me from you as well, are Tarkovsky and Bergman. And a quote she references about Bergman, perhaps, about Tarkovsky being the best film director because of how his cinema was a reflection of life, and this is all about reflection. So when that really awkward moment where she's reading Corinthians into the mirror as she's staring at her reflection, but keeps like looking at the camera like, "Are you still there?" which I kind of liked. But that whole passage, she uses a different translation, but there's several famous things. When I was a child, I blah blah blah. But the one that sticks out in my mind is that passage about through a glass darkly, and the translation she uses here is through a mirror dimly. Because a reflection is that what through a glass darkly means is we see, we don't get all of the information. It's not a real portrait. A reflection is never the reality. I don't know. To me, that there are lots of profound ideas. It's just that I don't know if it's relaying them in the most interesting of ways. I also wrote down, like, it's kind of deconstructed cinema about the manipulation of time and identity, because another refrain is really that all we have is time. That's all we have. We're all allotted a certain amount, ostensibly, and that's it.
I feel like the goal of the filmmaker was to like what's happening right now, like getting two assholes to go on and on about a movie, and it worked, and I think it's effective in that way. But like you said, it could have been done in a more interesting way. I don't want to say that this is like masochistic, like watching this film was like you're choosing to abuse yourself. It's not that arduous.
No, but I think that if you're attuned to this performer, I think that you will find some bits of enjoyment, because they're using Isabelle Huppert as a conduit into the meaning of cinema and what she can do for you as if you let her, is kind of what it's about. And it made me think of the Queen's remix of "Break My Soul," where Beyonce says, "Give it to me, I'm built for this. Like, I can take your pain." Those are the kind of thoughts I was having, which might be a reach, but to me that's kind of in essence what she's saying is, if you give yourself unto it, instead of just passively being a spectator, trying to escape, instead of also simultaneously deal with the processing of information.
What else would you say about this film?
Isabelle explains it all to us. That was also one of my drafts for a pull quote. But again, I highly enjoy just looking at her. And I think she looks fantastic. She's what, 72? I don't know. To me, it's understandable why this didn't get a greater film festival berth as a premiere, and also why it's kind of getting this elusive little virtual cinema release, because who knows what other opportunity anyone would want to or be able to see this. It almost feels like it's an installation piece, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're like a pretentious cinephile who wants to argue about a film, this would be a good selection. Or if you really like Isabelle Huppert, it could be a fun experience. Films don't have to be enjoyable to me to get a good score, but I think in addition to everything I said, the fact that I did not enjoy the viewing experience would force me to give this film 2 out of 5.
But we all appreciate your patience and your thoughts.
Do we?
Yes. But I'm giving it a 3.
Wow. Anything else?
No.
Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.